Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to 90 Day Fiancé latest news. The hospital room was quite quiet, perhaps too peaceful. The low hum of machines, the slow, rhythmic beep of the monitor, and the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway only made the silence seem louder. Colt Johnson lay quietly on the hard mattress, looking up at the ceiling tiles. One hand rested on the light blue hospital blanket that was pulled up to his waist. He blinked gently and breathed steadily, but not deeply, as if taking a full breath may stir up the anguish again. It had been exactly 371 days since the crash. He could remember every second. The sound of tires screeching, the abrupt shock, the sound of metal bending and breaking like paper. And then nothing, or maybe all of it. Sirens that are blurry, hands pulling on him, the smell of smoke. The ache in his leg was like lightning. Later, they told him that the bone was broken in many places. The doctor had added, in the antiseptic, matter-of-fact tone that medical experts use to tell you that your life has altered forever, comminuted fracture of the tibia and fibula. He didn't cry then. He didn't yell. He nodded his head. That was all. It took 4 hours for the initial procedure. Plates made of titanium. Screws. A bunch of hardware that was now stuck in his leg, keeping the pieces together. He had shared a picture of himself in a hospital bed back then, smiling and giving a thumbs up, which seemed more like a show than a real feeling. I'll be able to walk again soon. He informed his followers that. He told himself that. But no time grew into months. And now months had turned into more than a year. And now he was back. Colt shifted his head a little bit toward the tray table next to him. His phone was on it, but the screen was off and notifications were stacking up underneath. He hadn't touched it in hours, not since he put the update on Instagram. I don't usually like to share things like this, but I need your prayers. It was weird to ask the world for something so simple and pure. Over the years, he had posted a lot of images and discussed personal and often messy parts of his life. But this time it was different. This time, he wasn't sharing for the cameras or the people who followed him. He was sharing because he didn't have any other ideas. He wasn't afraid to say it. He was afraid. The doctor had come in earlier with a new set of x-rays, and the news was worse than the first diagnosis. The bone was still broken. A year of rehabilitation for the body. Stretching and moving that hurt. Long hikes that felt like they would never end. The icy pain of metal rods inside his body on rainy nights. None of it meant anything. They termed it non-union. He thought about the word like it was a rock. Not a union. It sounded like something that should happen when a firm goes on strike or a marriage fails, not when a bone breaks. But that's what it was. For reasons that no one could fully explain, his body had just decided not to recover. The physicians expressed it in a clinical way. We might have to go back in. Maybe a bone graft. You'll have to go through another long recovery. Colt had nodded, just like the first time. But something inside broke. He remembered what happened shortly after the doctor departed. He had his back to the wall and his eyes closed. The tears came, hot and quiet, and ran down the side of his face, soaking into the hospital pillow. He didn't cry when the accident happened. After the first procedure, he didn't cry. Not even when he initially saw the pale train tracks of scars running down his leg. But now it was different. It was the weight of time, of thinking he had done everything properly, yet nevertheless ending up back at the start. It wasn't only the anguish in my body, it was the tiredness in my soul. The progressive loss of trust. The scary thought that this might never end. He might never walk the same way again. He might never feel entire again. 1 year before, Debbie, his mother and constant defender, had almost moved into his flat in the weeks after the accident. She made him food, kept track of his meds, helped him bathe when he couldn't stand, and even handled the torrent of messages from worried admirers. There were days that were good, laughing at TV shows, thoughts about vintage Las Vegas stories, times when it seemed like everything will be fine. But there were also bad days. Days when Colt laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, and thought this was karma. For all of it. For Larissa. For Jess. For Vanessa. For the public drama, the failures, and the allegations. Because people called him selfish. Eerie. In charge. He had done things wrong. So many. But was this his punishment? Now, the second surgery was unavoidable. The physicians had set it up for the next morning. He would go under again, this time for a more difficult surgery. They would take off a piece of his bone. Put a graft from his hip in its place. Put in new hardware. People have already said the words risk of infection, nerve damage, and limited mobility. In a cold way, without much thought, Colt looked at his leg under the blanket. From the outside, it appeared fine. The scars were fading, but the truth was deeper, under the muscle and skin, where the bone wouldn't come back to life. Was it his fault? Was he pushing too hard too quickly? Had he failed to get better? The thought made his chest feel tight. Vanessa had called before. They were no longer married. Not really pals at all. But she reached out when she heard the news. She said softly. She didn't say anything, simply that she was sorry. That she was praying for him. That she knew how hard it had been for him to get better. It stung more than he thought it would. Not what she said, but the memory of everything he had lost in the past year. The leg was the most obvious portion. Colt used to think he could fix everything. His body, his relationships, and his reputation. But now he was starting to think that certain things never got better. The hours went by slowly. He saw the sky outside change from pink to gray to dark. Nurses came and went, checking vital signs, changing IVs, and giving smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Of course, they had seen this before. Men attempting to be strong, smiling even when it hurts, nodding while their world came apart inside them. Colt was no longer acting. He didn't mind if the world saw him weak. He had been ripped apart on the internet, criticized on national television, and made fun of in comment sections and Reddit threads for years. But this was more than just shame. This was giving up. Not the sort that meant giving up, but the kind that meant finally accepting what was. He couldn't solve this in a day. He couldn't get out of it by making memes. He could only lie there and wait for the next step. Eventually, he answered his phone. A lot of people commented on his post. Prayers, emojis of hearts, words of support. Even a few fans who had made fun of him in the past sent him real wishes for his recovery. He read them all. Then he silently typed an answer. Thanks, everyone. I truly need the strength right now. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm going to keep battling. It wasn't really exciting. It wasn't poetic, but it was true, and that, at last, felt like enough. 2 days later, the operation was finished. Colt gently opened his eyes. The anesthesia made his eyesight fuzzy. The first thing he felt was pain. It was a dull, deep anguish that spread from his leg like fire through stone. The second thing he noticed was how quiet the room was. The kind of quiet that typically comes after the hardest fights. He had gotten through. He could still hear the doctor's speech in his head. The surgery went well. We need to keep a tight eye on everything. This will take a long time to heal, but we've done everything we can. We do everything we can. It didn't sound like a vow, but it sounded like a chance. Colt found little bits of serenity as the days went by. How the sun hit his blanket in the morning. The way Debbie brought him coffee and made fun of him for snoring when the nurse was there. The messages from his old castmates, even those he hadn't talked to in years. The voice messages from fans who have been with him since the start. He learned something surprising. Pain could bring people together as well as tear them apart. Colt felt that people noticed him as a person for the first time in a long time, not as a character, a meme, or a train wreck of a boyfriend. Someone who was injured. Someone who gave it a shot. Someone who got hurt, but got back up. And thus he got better. Long-time shoe. Every day. The path ahead was still unclear. Another year of therapy? Maybe. Another operation? I hope not. But Colt was no longer afraid of the unknown. He had been through the worst. And he was still here. Last Instagram post, 2 weeks later, this year has been the hardest year of my life. In terms of body, mind, and feelings. But I'm still here. And I'm thankful. I've done things wrong. I've lived in a way that most people can't even imagine. But deep down, I'm just a guy who wants to get better. Trying to make progress. Thanks for being there for me. Thanks for your prayers. I'm getting better now. And this time, I'm not doing it by myself. This gossip is over. If you liked the video, then give your opinion in the comment box and stay with us by subscribing the channel. Thank you.